The biggest reason the poor are still with us is simply this: we expect that they should be. I wonder if we lack the imagination, if we lack the hope that the world could be dramatically different. The good news is we can be released from the tyranny of our low expectations. We can be free from that lie that the future will somehow be like our past. The truth is, extreme global poverty can be overthrown by our generation. But maybe you're a realist. You're a little skeptical. You may believe that it's possible in theory, but you kind of doubt that it could be accomplished anytime soon. The statistics are overwhelming. 164,000 children died of measles in a single year. 881,000 people were killed by malaria. 1.4 billion people struggle to live in extreme poverty. That's surviving on less than $1.25 per day. But measles doesn't kill people. Malaria doesn't kill people. A lack of food or clean water, they don't kill people. Even most natural disasters, they rarely kill people. There is one single killer responsible for all of these deaths: extreme poverty. Poverty is the difference between a $5 latte with an extra shot or a $5 shot that will protect a child from dying of measles. Poverty is the difference between an earthquake in Los Angeles killing 63 people and an earthquake of similar magnitude in Haiti killing 220,000 people. Wherever poverty has a stronghold, the statistics are grim. I recently spoke at a pastor's conference. I asked these church leaders, these pastors, to write down one verse, the first verse that came to their mind about poverty or about the poor. You want to guess what the most common answer was? The poor will always be with you. Jesus said those words right after Mary poured a $45,000 jar of perfume on his feet. And Judas, Judas Iscariot, the greedy little treasurer, he saw that money dripping on the floor, dripping on that dirt, and he objected and he said, "Why this waste? This perfume could have been sold and the money given to the poor. It was worth a year's wages." So Jesus then turns to Judas, the keeper of the purse, and he says, "You'll always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me." Well, wait a second. Let's look at that again. You will not always have me? We will not always have Jesus? But later he says, "I will be with you always." Which is it? We know the answer. How can we treat the first half of this sentence like an all-time proclamation and we put the second half in context? Who is the you? Jesus didn't say the poor would always be with us. Jesus didn't somehow ordain economic poverty because he wasn't talking to us. He was talking to Judas. When Jesus prayed, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," it wasn't some cliche fit for a greeting card. It was his driving ambition for his kingdom. And God does not want people to suffer in economic poverty. God does not intend for people to die of preventable diseases. God clearly and repeatedly has commanded us to care for the poor, and God has given us everything we need to end extreme poverty. Here is the astounding truth. The tyranny of extreme poverty is being broken. In the past 8 years, the number of kids dying from measles has dropped by 78%. 22 countries have cut their malaria rate in half, and they did it in only 6 years. We used to say that 40,000 children die every day from preventable causes. In the 90s, that number dropped from 40,000 to 33,000 per day, and in 2008, it dropped again to 24,000, and now we're down to 21,000. We cut that number in half in a generation. I'd like to take you back 200 years to 1810. We had an average lifespan of 30 years, and almost all of us were living in extreme economic poverty, but things begin to change. Industrialization starts to happen in Europe, and the economies are growing, and as they're making more money, they're able to secure more quality food, and they're living longer, they're living healthier. And in that time, we discover electricity, and we invent the automobile, and airplanes, and vaccines, and soon the rest of the world is following. And as you look across that whole span of time, you see this momentum, the sense that we are heading somewhere. Even those countries that we look at today and think, it's just not possible. They are all following this path out of extreme poverty and into a new place. You remember that massive number that I gave you earlier, the number of people living in extreme poverty, 1.4 billion? Well, listen to this. If you're only going to remember one set of numbers from all this stuff I'm telling you, remember this: 52 to 26 and 26 to go. In 1981, 52% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number is 26%. We've cut the percentage of people living in extreme poverty in half, and we did it in a generation. If that's what the generation before ours did, just imagine what our generation can do. There are 138 million Christians in America who attend church regularly and say their faith is very important to them. Collectively, we earn $2.5 trillion per year. We would be the 7th richest country in the world. If we were a country, we'd have a seat at the G8. God has given us amazing wealth and influence. Question is, what are we going to do with it? What could we do with it? You know, in Isaiah 58, we find God's people. They are they're begging to receive blessings from the Lord. But they're exploiting their workers, and they're fighting with each other. They're bickering, and they're complaining that their sacrifices haven't been noticed by God, and that their fasting has been overlooked. But Isaiah, the prophet, he steps into that and he says, you want God to honor your sacrifices? Well, this is what you need to do. It's time to loose the chains of injustice. It's time to set the oppressed free. I believe the message of Isaiah 58 is the same message that we need to hear again today. No more idle words. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God. It's time for authentic action. Let's stop performing out of religious habits and start living the life we were called to. The poor will not always be with us. We do not need to live in a world where children die from preventable diseases. Extreme poverty and all the suffering it brings can be pushed into the history books. And God has given us the mandate and every resource that we need to accomplish that task. He has entrusted us with money, with knowledge, with influence, and with a brief amount of time on this earth, a brief amount of time in which to make a difference. Ending extreme poverty is our generation's greatest opportunity to join the ranks of those who fought for the end of the slave trade, to stand with those who worked for equal rights in the generations before ours. And we are asking you to join this march. Not because you need to, not from duty, not out of guilt, not with any reluctance, but because you want to, because you were made for this. Poverty has a solution. It is the true fast of Isaiah 58. When we fast, we give up something good for the sake of something great, like giving up food in order to focus on prayer. What fast will you choose? Go to live58.org and choose your fast. Commit to your strategy in the great cause of ending poverty.